I was walking out of the joint August of 2015. I had a CO on each side of me, and they cracking jokes. We're going to Motel 6 you, Mcgill. We'll leave the light on. I'm going to tell Big Country to leave some noodles on your rack for you. You know, stuff like that. That's what they said.
Hey everybody, I'm sitting here with my good friend Jimmy Mcgill, and Jimmy has a story that's amazing, and the work that he's doing is absolutely amazing. There are so many people whose lives have drastically improved with equality because of the work that this man does here in Arkansas. So Jimmy, I want to thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah,
Why don't you tell the people a little bit about your background story, man? Where'd you come from?
Nah, man, I came from a really bad place. But I've got a pretty amazing life today. You know, I'm in long-term recovery, and that means I haven't used any substances or alcohol in 8 years, 6 months, and 5 days today. But I was trapped in IV drug addiction for 23 years, in and out of adult prison for 13 years, a couple of years in juvenile before that. I came from a really broken environment, poverty, crime-infested, active drug use, prostitution, just that atmosphere of chaos where everybody's trying to hit a lick on the next person, trying to figure out how to get what you got, and how can I get a piece of that. And so I was desensitized real early to things that should have scared me and things that were abnormal.
So can you trace where you started to like a root trauma, or do you think it was just your entire environment, or do you think that this type of thing is hereditary? What do you attribute it to?
Yeah, I'm the third generation of addiction, right? And as far back as I can remember active drug use in my household. I was 4 or 5 years old, holding my dad's arm off so he could find a good vein to do his shot with. I watched him get arrested on murder charges, rape charges, robbery charges, like he was a real Viking. He was notoriously known in the Arkansas Department of Corrections. He had no fear of consequences. He ran the penitentiary. Everybody was scared of him in the streets and incarcerated. And so he did what he wanted, regardless. And so I grew up with that mindset. You know, parenting really is an influential thing. And so I loved him, and he loved me the best he could, but his primary affection was for a substance, right? And at 66, he passed away with his drug of choice still on his body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it seemed like the only time we really connected when I was young is when I did some random act of violence or some obnoxious, abnormal behavior that he thought was cute. He would rub my head and kind of, you know, we would connect for a minute. So, like, if I socked the neighbor's kid in the eye, where the neighbor might have got, "Oh, don't you fight," my dad was like, "Way to go," you know.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that he enjoyed that, that's what I amplified.
That's how you got acceptance from the person that you looked up to in your life.
Yeah. And he did the best he could. He didn't know he suffered from addiction. He didn't know he had a treatable disease, right? And so I remember the last time I was in the joint that he was alive. I was doing like a 4-year bid, man. And he was there every Sunday for years. He never missed a visit. Now, he always brought me contraband and cigarettes, cell phones, narcotics, all the things I shouldn't have had. But that was the only way he knew how to love me.
Yeah.
And he was literally my best friend. I could call him anytime. He was ready to ride, man.
Well, we've grown and evolved in our understanding and our education and our progression with the disease of substance use disorder.
Yeah.
So much in so many facets, and it's wild because there are people who went out there and literally fought and pioneered against the stigma, and the people who did the research.
Yeah.
And you are one of those people who is out here pioneering against the stigma and showing people what people in recovery can do. Do you think that 9 years ago, many people would have thought, man, Jimmy Mcgill, that dude's going to change the face of Arkansas?
No, absolutely. Listen, I was walking out of the joint August of 2015. I had a CO on each side of me, and they cracking jokes. "We're going to Motel 6 you, Mcgill. We'll leave the light on. I'm going to tell Big Country to leave some noodles on your rack for you." You know, stuff like that. That's what they said.
You guys got Big Country out here?
Oh, yeah, we got them. And this is Arkansas, man.
Yeah.
So but what they didn't see was me becoming one of the leading voices for addiction awareness and recovery awareness in America. They didn't see me spending more time on airplanes than in vehicles. They didn't see me sharing the stage with the President of the United States. They didn't see me getting invited to the White House to advise on drug policy. They didn't see me becoming the first parolee to have a state position. I was on parole with a pending drug charge working for the state. That's how much noise I made in recovery. And so all of a sudden, my past, 6 trips to prison, multiple felony convictions, became on-the-job training to do something I was uniquely qualified for. And so when we talk advocacy, when you're talking about awareness, JD, who the hell is better to be at the table when we're trying to lower recidivism, we're trying to save lives, overdose prevention. People like JD DeLay and Jimmy Mcgill don't just need to be at the table. We are the table. We need to be inviting people to the table, not receiving the invitations. Stop making decisions about us and listen to us if you want effective, lasting change.
And that's why peer support is so important.
Yeah.
It's such a huge therapeutic value to our community, which is a vulnerable community.
Yeah.
Now, let's just talk about this. Like in the state of Arkansas, y'all recognize substance use disorder as a disabled and vulnerable community, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me some of the work that you guys are doing to protect and help and advocate for those communities in the state of Arkansas, because I've not seen what y'all are doing in any of the other states that I've been to. You guys are literally pioneering it, and I'm not gonna lie to you, Jimmy. I love you. I'm not gonna lie to you. When I used to think of Arkansas, I used to think of that song that people did off the Barney. You ever heard that?
No, man.
He gonna punch me in my mouth. Check
What's
this
wrong
out.
with dude, man?
So like, yo, I love you, you love me. We're a happy family.
Oh, so you
We
think
all
we're
laugh and
porking
say
our cousins.
hee-haw. I say I'm from Arkansas. That's what I.
That is not what
That
I
was the
think
most
of.
I knew about
Yeah.
Arkansas
I mean, you
until
could have
Jimmy
said the
started telling me what
Razorbacks.
y'all doing out here.
He's out of there, man. You could have said Bill Clinton. Everybody knows Bill Clinton.
Everybody do know old Bill.
Bill didn't inhale.
I know he didn't inhale.
I did.
Yeah, I inhaled for
I
him
did.
and me and you and all of us.
Listen, I shared the stage with Bill last year at Mobilize Recovery, and I wanted to get up there and say, you know, it's an honor and a privilege to speak after a former president who didn't inhale, but I'm on this stage because I did, and it derailed my life from there on. But I didn't do that. They said it would have been political suicide.
Yeah. So tell me what you guys are doing to protect this community. You guys are so progressive.
Yeah.
And that was my point, is like people have a different look or view of Arkansas. Y'all are the most progressive in the game when it comes to recovery that I have seen.
Yeah. So, you know, yesterday the director of the Office of Recovery from SAMHSA spoke at this conference that we're at, and he formally told the entire audience that Arkansas was leading the country, and that's, you know, that's a huge hit, man. That's a good feeling, because most of that happened under my watch. Now, I just resigned from my position 2 months ago to go run a reentry program that my wife and I have 34 men. But during the 5 years that I spent as the director for recovery here, we created 54 programs. We created 12 jail recovery programs utilizing people like us, formerly incarcerated people who are in active recovery. We have 6 overdose response teams where law enforcement are working beside recovering addicts, using that to save and break the stigma, save lives and break stigma. We've got 8 emergency room programs where you've got peer recovery specialists in the emergency room as part of the hospital staff. If you come in on an overdose, they're going to offer you treatment, help you get linked to recovery housing, you name it. We're in the Division of Youth Services. We got a training academy inside the prison to train people like you and I to get them credentialed so that when they are released, they're employable.
While they're in prison.
While they're in
Now,
prison.
can they get their certification in peer support while they still on paper here in the state of Arkansas?
Yeah. The only thing,
Florida doing us wrong out there.
So in the state of Arkansas, well, we changed laws in 2018. That was one of the first big things I did as a director, is we fought, and our governor changed state laws that people with a criminal history can and should work in the of a peer recovery support specialist, and he signed it as an emergency, so it went into effect immediately.
So do they have to go through the exemption process, or
No,
they just?
no. The only thing you have to be exempt for, you cannot be a peer with a sexual nature charge. Right?
Yeah.
Can't do that.
Good.
Because we work with
a vulnerable population, man.
Yeah.
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 No, and that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
But like, you know, in the state of Florida, if you got a possession, you have to go through an exemption process.
No, that's bull
Why
crap.
would you have people have to go through a whole lengthy process
For
where
the
they have to
thing
get
that
clearance
qualifies
and
us.
approval
Yeah.
for what is on our resume to be able to help other people through
No.
the same thing? It don't make a lick of sense.
No, it doesn't, because a drug arrest should be a qualifying factor in the role of a peer recovery specialist. Like, the people ask me all the time, well, Jimmy, what did you do before recovery? I got high.
Yeah.
I hit licks. I robbed. I did what we do.
Yeah.
And none of that should count against me when that is the tool that my job as a peer worker, my past is the pathway to productivity.
Mm-hmm.
My past is not to be ashamed of today. I embrace it and I use it, and those mistakes are now meaningful.
So we've talked a little bit about where you came from, and we've talked a lot about where you are right now and the things that you're actually implementing. But for the people out there who are just getting into their path of recovery or thinking about getting on their pathway to recovery, when you got out of prison 8 years ago, because you've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
In 8 years, to be walking out of prison and within 8 years sharing a stage with an ex-president of the United States of America,
Supreme Court, all that.
that's crazy. So
And I received a full pardon last year with firearm rights.
you got your pew-pew rights?
Yes, man.
Ooh.
Then I went to buy a gun last month, and the FBI flagged me, and so now I'm in the appeals process. It turns out when you get a pardon, it's still visible.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. To the people who are just starting or thinking about starting their process of recovery, why don't you walk them through what that looked like for you, man?
Yeah, man. So the day I got out of the joint, the last time, I did something different. I went to a mutual aid group. I went to an atmosphere of recovery instead of a dope house. So I paroled out to a recovery residence, and normally I could have went anywhere. I could have went back to the side. You know, I had a big girl who was waiting on me.
You had a big girl that was waiting on
She
you.
loved me, man. She was ready.
Yeah.
She was waiting for Jimmy. And
Take you to the trap trailer?
I didn't go. She would have done anything in the world for me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go. I knew that with the pending charge, my only option was to get in treatment, find recovery, and if I did that, because this was my 6th time in the joint.
Mm-hmm.
So if I would have got sentenced and sent back, in my mind, I would be too old to enjoy life, or I would die in prison.
I hear it.
You know what I mean? My
Mm-hmm.
history was too bad. But, you know, God had a different plan for Jimmy. And so I went into that recovery place, and I heard something I'd never heard before by a population of people that never tried to carry that message. So when I came home, there had been a lot of people who tried to reach me, teachers, preachers, prison psychiatrists, counselors, therapists. I wouldn't even give them the chance. I thought when I shared that I robbed everything my mom had to use, that they would judge me. I thought when you heard how many people I stole from, that you would be condescending to me. So I didn't give them a chance. But when it was a person like you who said, bro, I get it. I stole all my dad's stuff too. I was like, and in seconds, I opened up.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the message was carried by the right messenger, I heard it. It hit different. It hit different, JD.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden I found something I never found before, hope. Because there were people in that meeting who I shot dope with, who I robbed with. I knew them at their worst, and I could barely recognize them. Recovery was so transformative. And they welcomed me, and they accepted me for who I was that day. And something about that made me want to come back. And I did, and I never quit coming.
Mm-hmm. And now you're the one being the example of that restoration, of that recovery, of that rehabilitation.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You're the one shining the light on the path so that other people that are still in the darkness can see.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty, man. I don't know about you, but for me, that's ultimately humbling, and it makes me actually feel like I'm doing something with my life. It's become my purpose. I've been able to take 20 years of chaos and misery and crime and addiction and make some sense out of it, because it puts it to purpose that now I can use my story, and I have a voice because I've been there that'll reach the people that are in the trenches. They can hear me
Like they don't hear nobody else.
The same way that I heard the same guys like one of my mentors, Joe Paprocki, I would not have been able to hear it from somebody who had vital information for my survival, and he could have had every degree on his wall, he could have had every possible certification, and never would have hit my ear the same way as somebody who would been to the prison, been in the gutter.
Yeah.
And that's what we get to be for those other men now.
Yeah, it hits different, man.
So you shared with me, off camera, you shared with me that your son is 12 years old?
Yeah.
And he just came back from a trip from Ireland.
Yeah, man.
What was Jimmy Mcgill doing when he was 12 years old?
I was in juvenile for shoplifting.
So you are breaking generational curses and cycles right here.
Yeah. My son will never know what it's like to need me and me not be there. You know, I watched him put a worm on his fish hook for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and that was really cool, man. Like I said, my dad loved me the best he knew how, man. It wasn't his fault. He was from a different generation, man. And addiction had him.
Yeah.
And addiction does not have me today, right? Recovery does. And because of the gift of recovery, it's been able to unlock the gates of hell and set me free. And that made me available to be a husband and a father.
Amen, Jimmy. So I just want you guys to understand exactly how much pull Jimmy has here in the state of Arkansas, where he serves people that are lost in addiction and that cycle of recidivism. I could never, ever, even with all the community service work that I did and all the outreach work that I did, they would not have ever let me in the jail in Daytona Beach, Florida, or where I'm at in Eugene, Oregon, to be able to speak to inmates and be able to share my story and try to give them some hope and a little bit of guidance and a little bit of peace, knowing that there is a light at the end of that tunnel and they don't have to go back to that old lifestyle. Jimmy made one phone call, and he got me into the county jail here. He could make a phone call and probably get me into any of the institutions here so that I could go and speak. And that's what true work in the recovery community and acknowledgement looks like, man. Like, there would be so much clearance, and I'd have to go through so much red tape to be able to do that in any of the other places that I've lived. But Jimmy has paved a path that is going to allow others to be able to walk straight through and be able to have access to help people who are truly in need. I appreciate you, Jimmy.
Yes. Don't forget to plug me, man.
Hey, tell them your channels, man.
Oh, hey, From Prison to Purpose on YouTube. That's with a 2.
Okay, so what's your
TikTok? I think
TikTok?
it's with a 2. Prison to Purpose.
What's your Facebook?
I think my Prison to Purpose on YouTube is actually Prison to Purpose.
Well, I'm going to tag you in the description, bro.
Perfect.
So, and your Facebook is?
Jimmy Mcgill Live.
Now, we need to talk real quick. What is your your recovery residence? What's the name of that? Plug that.
Next Step Recovery Housing. We are cutting edge, kicking butt. We recover out loud. We share our guys' stories. We are the stuffing in the turkey when it comes to housing.
And what's your guys' motto there? What are you doing?
Make God cool and recovery fun. That's
Hell
it.
yeah. Now, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot, man. Is your music on Spotify?
Yeah, it's everywhere, but we ain't worried about all that. It's really negative.
Okay. I get that, brother. I get that.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, man. Thank you for bringing me out here. Thank you for sharing a little bit of hope and passion with me, bro.
I love it, man. All right.
Thank you guys for tuning in, man. I love each and every one of you, and we'll see you on the next one.